Welcome the anointed ones. The loudest wars are never fought on battlefields. They're fought in the silence of people pretending not to care. Chosen ones. Let me tell you something shocking. Nearly 60% of human conflicts are sparked not by the truth itself, but by the lies told to cover it up. And when that lie is about you, the chosen one, the blast is inevitable, because you're not just a name they toss around, you're the unspoken obsession they tried to bury. Picture this. Someone swears up and down that you don't matter, that you're irrelevant, that they feel nothing about you. And yet, 3 days later, an explosive fight breaks out because their nothing turned into a raging inferno no one could contain. That's not just irony, that's exposure. That's the universe saying, nice try, but truth always leaks. And here's the sprinkle of humor. Funny how the ones claiming you're not worth a thought somehow spend all their thoughts arguing about you, like unpaid PR managers who can't quit their job. They'll say you're irrelevant while hosting a full committee meeting about your name. But underneath the comedy lies the suspense. Their lies about you didn't just stay quiet in the corner, they became grenades. And the moment somebody challenged those lies, boom, the fight erupted, dragging every hidden truth into the open. So buckle up, because what we're about to uncover is not just gossip, it's revelation. This isn't about petty drama, it's about how the denial of feelings for you turned into a war zone that even they couldn't control. And you, chosen one, are at the center of it. Not because you asked for it, but because truth refuses to stay caged. Number 1. They lied about you because the truth would expose their own emptiness. They lied about how they felt about you because admitting the truth would have ripped the mask off everything they pretend to be. Deep down, they knew that acknowledging you would expose a hunger, a need, and a vulnerability they've worked so hard to hide. People who secretly battle emptiness can't stand to reveal the one person who makes them feel whole. So instead of confessing what you stir in them, they went the opposite way. Denial, dismissal, and disguise. They built walls of false words to make it look like you meant nothing, when in reality you meant everything. Their lie wasn't casual, it was survival for them. If they admitted how much they cared, they'd have to confront why they treated you the way they did. They'd have to answer for the contradictions between their actions and their feelings. And they weren't ready for that kind of accountability. So the safer route, at least in their mind, was to pretend that you never mattered. That way, they could protect the image they show the world while silencing the truth screaming inside of them. But silence never lasts. Lies always rot from the inside out. What makes this so brutally revealing is that they thought the lie would protect them, but it did the opposite. By saying you were nothing to them, they ended up exposing just how much power you actually hold in their world. Because no one wastes energy lying about something that doesn't matter. You don't lie about a stranger you'll never see again. You lie about the one who keeps you up at night, the one who has a permanent seat in your thoughts. Their denial was a confession in disguise. That's why the fight broke out. Because the truth they buried didn't stay underground. It leaked through their tone, their body language, their reactions. Others around them started noticing the cracks. They said you didn't matter, but their emotions betrayed them. And suddenly the people in their circle were calling out the contradiction. And when that happened, their lie, the one they used as armor, turned into a battlefield. At the core, the explosive fight wasn't just about their words. It was about the emptiness they tried to fill with denial. They lied about you because the truth of how deeply you affect them scared them more than anything else. And that fear, once it reached boiling point, set everything on fire. Number 2, their denial created a battlefield between their ego and their heart. They lied with their mouth, but their heart refused to play along. And that's where the war began. Words are easy to manipulate. You can rehearse them, dress them up, or spit them out in a way that convinces people for a while. But the heart doesn't take orders. It leaks out through every unguarded reaction, every slip of the eye, every sudden shift in energy. That's why, no matter how hard they tried to deny how they felt about you, their behavior told a different story. Their ego wanted control, but their emotions kept staging a rebellion. This tug-of-war created an inner battlefield that spilled over into the open. On one side, they had their pride, whispering, "Don't let anyone see you care. Don't admit they affect you. Don't lose your upper hand." On the other side, their soul was screaming, "This person matters more than you're willing to admit. Stop pretending." That clash between ego and heart made them volatile. It's why they overreact whenever your name is mentioned. It's why they go quiet or defensive out of nowhere. They can say you don't matter, but the way their whole body shifts at the sound of you proves otherwise. The fight that erupted wasn't random. It was the explosion of that tension. Their mouth spoke one story, but their actions betrayed another, and eventually people around them caught on. Someone challenged the script they were trying to sell, and suddenly their carefully managed lie began to unravel. The truth doesn't need an invitation. It forces itself into the room, and when it does, denial crumbles under the weight of it. That's why the argument turned explosive, because they were no longer fighting you. They were fighting themselves. And here's the irony. They thought hiding their feelings would protect them, but it only exposed them more. The harder they tried to bury the truth, the louder it screamed. People can fake indifference for a season, but no one can fake the way their body betrays them when the topic cuts too deep. Their anger, their defensiveness, their sudden silence, those weren't slips, they were confessions in motion. At the end of it all, the fight wasn't about your presence, but about their inability to reconcile their pride with their emotions. They lied to protect their ego, but the very war inside them gave them away. Truth always finds its exit, and in their case, it broke out as chaos they could no longer contain. Number 3. The explosion happened because they involved too many witnesses in their lie. They could have kept their lie quiet, buried within their own mind, and no one would have known. But the problem started the moment they tried to drag other people into their denial. Instead of simply wrestling with their feelings in silence, they went around spreading a false version of how they felt about you. They spoke with confidence, as if rehearsed, convincing others that you meant nothing, that you didn't hold any place in their life. At first the performance seemed convincing, but lies don't travel well. They start to wobble the moment too many people are asked to carry them. The fight erupted because the story they told didn't add up. When you involve others in your cover-up, you're forced to repeat the same script over and over, and eventually the cracks start showing. Their tone changes, their eyes betray them, or their actions directly contradict what they've been preaching. Those around them start to notice the inconsistencies. They hear the words, "I don't care," but then they watch how defensive or jealous they become whenever your name enters the conversation. And that contradiction planted seeds of doubt in their circle. It only takes one person questioning the lie for everything to unravel. The people who once believed their story started pushing back, asking why their emotions didn't match their claims. That questioning turned into accusations, and the accusations turned into arguments. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a private denial became a public eruption. Their carefully constructed narrative couldn't withstand the pressure of scrutiny, and the result was an explosive fight that laid bare what they tried so hard to bury. The deeper truth is that lies always demand too much maintenance. A single truth stands on its own, but a lie requires constant patching up. The more they repeated it, the heavier it became, until even those closest to them grew tired of carrying it. Their friends, family, or peers didn't want to be part of the charade anymore. And when people stop carrying the weight of your lie, it collapses. What happened was more than just conflict. It was exposure. The lie they thought would protect them became the very reason they lost credibility. In trying to control the narrative about how they felt about you, they accidentally created a war they could never win. Number 4. They turned you into a subject of debate because they couldn't handle you as a truth. They turned you into a subject of debate because acknowledging you as truth would have shattered the identity they cling to. People who can't face their own emotions often turn the person who stirs those emotions into a topic instead. It's safer for them to intellectualize you, criticize you, or reduce you to gossip than to confess that you've left an unshakable mark inside of them. By turning you into a debate, they created a shield. They could laugh about you, argue about you, or tear you apart with words, all while hiding from the reality that your presence unsettled them in ways they couldn't control. The reason they debate you so much is because you activate something they've spent years trying to suppress. You don't just walk into a room, you disrupt the internal systems they've built to stay comfortable in their own mediocrity. That disruption feels like an earthquake because it shakes their carefully arranged excuses, their half-lived truths, their surface-level stability. And when people feel shaken, they panic. But instead of facing the source of the tremor, they'd rather talk around it. So you become the subject of endless conversations, theories, and arguments. Not because you're irrelevant, but because you're unavoidable. Debating you also gives them a false sense of control. If they can reduce you to a topic, then you stay at arm's length. They can frame you as too much, too little, too strange, or too complicated, and in doing so, they avoid the raw confrontation with themselves. To admit that you affect them would mean peeling back layers of denial, and most people are not ready for that level of honesty. So they cling to debate as a distraction, never realizing that the very act of obsessively discussing you already betrays how deeply you live in their mind. What's striking is that every heated argument about you is really an indirect confession. They don't debate people who leave no imprint. They don't dissect people who pass through their lives without consequence. The fact that your name keeps sparking conversations is proof that you're not just passing through. You've left a fault line in their soul. The earthquake you stirred is permanent, and all their debating is nothing more than noise trying to drown out the undeniable truth. You matter more than they dare to admit. Number 5. The argument revealed. They secretly measure their worth against you. The argument revealed something they never wanted anyone to see. They measure themselves against you more than they measure themselves against anyone else. The denial, the insults, the constant "I don't care about them" weren't statements of indifference, they were confessions in disguise. Every sharp word was really a mirror reflecting their inner battle with inadequacy. When people truly don't care, they move on. But when they keep circling back to your name, your choices, your presence, it's because you've become their silent yardstick. They don't just look at you, they weigh themselves against you. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your resilience exposes their weakness. Your authenticity magnifies their pretense. And that comparison is unbearable for them because it forces them to confront what they lack. Admitting the truth about how they feel would mean admitting they've fallen short in areas where you've risen. So instead they try to downplay you, mocking, dismissing, or belittling you to cover the fact that your existence has become the very scale they use to measure their worth. The fight exposed this because the energy was too intense to be rooted in nothing. People don't blow up over someone they think is beneath them. The eruption happened because the denial could no longer suppress the truth. Your presence disturbs them because it reminds them of everything they are not. The more they insisted you didn't matter, the clearer it became that you do. The louder they shouted that you're nothing, the more obvious it became that you're everything they secretly aspire to but can't embody. At the heart of this is insecurity disguised as hostility. They argue not because they truly despise you, but because they despise the reflection of themselves they see when you come into the picture. You've become a living reminder of their missed opportunities, their lack of courage, and their unwillingness to grow. They could have admired you, they could have learned from you, but their pride twisted admiration into rivalry. And so the argument laid their secret bare. They measure themselves against you daily, and every attempt to drag you down is just another attempt to lift themselves up. But no insult, no denial, no explosion of words can erase the truth. Your presence forces them to confront a reality they'd rather run from, and that reality is their deepest wound. Number 6. Their words about you were a shield, not a reflection. Their words about you were never truth, they were strategy. They said you didn't matter, not because that's what they believed, but because that was the shield they needed to carry. It was their way of keeping suspicion off their trail, a quick disguise to hide how deeply you've infiltrated their mind. To admit what you really mean to them would have exposed too much. It would have revealed vulnerability, desire, and dependency they weren't ready for anyone else to see. So they created a protective narrative, one polished enough to sound believable, but hollow enough to collapse under the slightest pressure. That's the danger of shields built out of lies. They can block scrutiny for a time, but the truth will always find cracks. The fight broke out because the disguise failed. People began noticing how their actions didn't match their words. They spoke like you were nothing, but their emotions and behavior kept circling back to you. They claimed they didn't care, but their reactions screamed otherwise. The narrative they spun began to contradict itself, and contradictions always demand resolution. That resolution came in the form of conflict. What's fascinating is how transparent this really was, even when they thought they were being clever. A person's words can say one thing, but energy never lies. Others could feel the tension every time your name surfaced. They could sense the defensiveness, the unnecessary sharpness, the nervous shifts. It became too obvious that their so-called indifference was nothing more than camouflage. And the harder they tried to convince everyone of their detachment, the more they revealed the depth of their attachment. In truth, their denial was a confession turned inside out. Every "they don't matter to me" was just a cover-up for "they never leave my thoughts." Every dismissal was really a plea not to be exposed. But when you build a shield out of falsehoods, life itself tests its strength, and in their case, it crumbled the moment it faced pressure. That's why the fight wasn't random. It was the breaking point of a false story too weak to carry the weight of reality. Their words about you weren't reflections of how they felt. They were defenses against being discovered. Yet in the end, those defenses betrayed them, because no shield can protect someone from the truth that keeps pounding inside their own chest. Number 7. The fight wasn't about you. It was about their fear of losing you. The fight wasn't really about you as a person. It was about the terrifying thought of losing you. That's what made the whole thing explode. People don't burn with emotion over someone they feel nothing for. Indifference doesn't cause arguments, it causes silence. What triggered the eruption was fear. And fear only rises when something or someone has weight in their world. Every raised voice, every sharp word, every heated denial was just the smoke coming from a fire they tried to hide, the fear of losing their connection to you, whether that connection was real, imagined, or denied. The irony is sharp here. They went out of their way to downplay you, to pretend you were replaceable, even disposable. But the sheer intensity of their reaction revealed the opposite. You don't fight to defend nothing. You don't waste energy over someone who supposedly has no impact on you. That's why the conflict told the truth louder than their words ever could. Their fear of losing you, of losing access to your presence, your influence, your energy, pushed them into a corner. And fear, when cornered, always comes out swinging. This is where human nature exposes itself most clearly. The louder the denial, the deeper the attachment. When they shouted that you didn't matter, what they were really doing was building walls around the fact that you mattered more than they could admit. The very idea of you slipping away, or worse, being claimed by someone else, unraveled the composure they tried to maintain. And because they couldn't admit the depth of that fear, it mutated into conflict. The fight became the cover for what they didn't dare confess. Losing you feels like losing a part of themselves. What's devastating for them is that the fear was self-created. If they had been honest from the beginning about how much they valued you, there would have been no need for explosions. But because they lied, denied, and pushed the truth away, the fear grew in silence until it erupted in chaos. They thought their anger would disguise their attachment, but it only highlighted it. The argument was nothing more than a flare signaling the truth they tried to bury. When it comes to you, they aren't indifferent at all. They're terrified of losing the very thing they keep pretending they don't need. Number 8. Their lie was too heavy for their circle to carry. Their lie didn't just weigh on them, it weighed on everyone they dragged into it. At first, when they told their friends, family, or associates that you didn't matter, it seemed simple enough to believe. People nodded, took their word, and carried on. But the problem with lies is that they require constant maintenance, and the moment others start watching closely, the maintenance becomes exhausting. Their circle began to notice how their words didn't match their reactions. They said they didn't care about you, but their mood shifted whenever your name surfaced. They said you were irrelevant, yet they couldn't stop mentioning you. That inconsistency started to gnaw at the people around them. Carrying a lie is like holding a leaking bucket. Everyone who tries to keep it filled eventually grows tired because the effort outweighs the purpose. The truth requires no effort. It simply stands on its own. But a lie demands energy, constant defense, and repeated storytelling. Their circle grew weary of defending something that never added up. You can only pretend for so long before fatigue sets in, and once it did, frustration followed. The explosive fight wasn't about you directly. It was about the exhaustion of being asked to support a narrative that kept collapsing. Some in their circle likely confronted them, pointing out the contradictions. Others may have lost patience, refusing to keep entertaining a story that didn't align with reality. That resistance cracked the shield they had built, and the fight erupted because the burden of the lie had become too heavy to carry any longer. The deeper truth is that lies create resentment, even in those who agree to keep them alive. People don't like being manipulated into defending something false. Once their circle realized they were being dragged into a cover-up, the frustration turned into conflict. That's why the eruption wasn't just emotional, it was inevitable. The lie wasn't only theirs anymore, it had become a shared weight, and no one wanted to hold it. In the end, the lie collapsed under its own heaviness. Their circle let it drop, and in that moment, the fight broke open. What was supposed to protect their image ended up destroying their credibility, because nothing fractures relationships faster than forcing others to carry a truth you're too afraid to admit yourself. Number 9. They feared that acknowledging you would make them accountable to you. They feared acknowledging you because acknowledgement carries responsibility. The moment they admitted you mattered to them, they would have been forced to look back at how they treated you, and that reflection would have been brutal. They would have had to face the words they spoke in anger, the opportunities they sabotaged, the times they ignored you when they should have stood by you. For them, it wasn't just about confessing feelings, it was about confessing failure. And that was too heavy a mirror for them to look into. So denial became their strategy of survival. By claiming you meant nothing, they created a convenient loophole. If you were irrelevant, then they didn't have to explain their actions. If you didn't matter, then they didn't have to apologize. It was easier to erase you with their mouth than to face the reality that they had underestimated, mishandled, or even mistreated someone whose presence weighed heavily in their soul. Denial gave them breathing room, but it also built a shaky foundation, one destined to crack. The problem with denial is that it doesn't erase the truth. It only delays its confrontation. The more they insisted you weren't important, the more obvious it became that you were. People began to notice the tension between their words and their behavior. If you didn't matter, why did their tone change when your name came up? If you were irrelevant, why did they grow defensive whenever someone praised you? Those inconsistencies couldn't be hidden forever, and once others began questioning them, the denial turned into conflict. The fight wasn't simply about emotions, it was about accountability. The lie was a shield to protect them from responsibility, but when it cracked, the truth demanded answers. Admitting you matter means admitting they mishandled you, and admitting that means admitting they weren't as in control, as strong, or as untouchable as they pretended to be. For people who build their identity on pride, that's a terrifying admission. So instead of accountability, they chose conflict. They lashed out, argued, and tried to deflect, because that felt safer than simply saying, yes, this person mattered to me, and I failed them. But the very eruption they hoped would cover their tracks only exposed the depth of what they were hiding. Denial didn't save them. It trapped them in the very accountability they tried to escape. Number 10. The fight was a mirror of their inner war. The fight was nothing more than a mirror of the war already consuming them on the inside. Long before voices were raised and accusations were thrown, the chaos was alive within them. They've been split in two, one part desperate to dismiss you and another unable to stop clinging to you in silence. That contradiction gnawed at them, creating an inner storm that no one could see but everyone could feel. When the fight broke out, it wasn't new chaos being born. It was their private torment spilling into the open, unable to stay caged any longer. Their circle only magnified what was already happening in their heart. The shouting, the tension, the sharp defensiveness. It all reflected the same noise they've been living with internally. They've been screaming at themselves, denying you in one breath while obsessing over you in another. They've been accusing themselves of weakness, of failure, of not being able to cut ties with you no matter how hard they try. And so when others challenged them, when people questioned their story, that inner battle finally projected outward. The room became a stage for their self-conflict. What makes it even clearer is how irrational the eruption seemed to others. From the outside, it might have looked like an overreaction, but that's the point. It wasn't just about the present moment. It was about all the unspoken wars building inside them for so long. Every denial, every bottled-up thought, every hidden feeling exploded in that instant. The argument was less about defending their words and more about drowning out the truth that has been tormenting them in silence. This is the tragedy of people who live in contradiction. They think they can hide their inner war from the world, but life always creates mirrors. Their circle became that mirror, reflecting back the battle they've been losing within themselves. The fight was simply proof that their lie was no longer just their own. It infected the space around them until everyone could see it. In reality, the conflict was never truly with those around them. It was with themselves. They cannot reconcile what you mean to them, and so their private torment took form in public chaos. The fight was just the echo. The real war is the one they're still fighting every time your name crosses their mind. Number 11. You became the taboo they couldn't stop speaking about. You became the taboo they couldn't stop speaking about. The subject they swore was off limits, yet somehow kept creeping into every conversation. That's the paradox. They tried to bury your name, but in trying to erase it, they only made it louder. Suppression has a strange way of transforming into obsession. The harder they tried to keep you out of the spotlight, the more the spotlight seemed to follow you. Every time they told themselves or others, this person doesn't matter, they fed the very energy that made you impossible to ignore. What made this so obvious was the pattern. No matter what the original topic was, somehow, some way, the conversation always circled back to you. Someone else's success reminded them of your resilience. A random situation triggered a comparison to how you handled things. Even in moments where your name wasn't spoken, the energy in the room shifted at the thought of you. They couldn't escape the gravity you carried, and that gravitational pull kept exposing the truth. They were fixated on you while desperately pretending not to be. The taboo they tried to place on you wasn't just for others, it was for themselves. If they could convince everyone else that you weren't important, maybe they could finally convince their own heart. But that's not how it works. The more they tried to silence you, the more their own behavior betrayed the opposite. Their irritation, their defensiveness, their constant need to disprove your significance all pointed to one thing. You had already taken root in their mind, and no amount of denial could uproot it. The irony is sharp here. They thought refusing to acknowledge you would shrink your presence, but it amplified it instead. It made people more curious. It drew attention to the very thing they wanted to hide. By making you the forbidden topic, they made you unforgettable. That's the nature of taboos. What's forbidden becomes irresistible. And you, chosen one, became that irresistible subject. At its core, this wasn't about hatred or dismissal. It was about obsession disguised as rejection. They thought silencing your name would free them, but instead, it chained them even tighter. You became the echo they couldn't escape, the subject they tried to shut down but couldn't live a day without referencing. Suppression betrayed them, and in that betrayal, the truth was undeniable. You mattered so much you became the very thing they couldn't stop talking about. Number 12. The conflict exposed the fragility of their influence. The conflict exposed the fragility of their influence in a way they never expected. For a time, people believed their words about you. Friends, colleagues, or associates accepted their version of events, trusting the certainty in their voice and the confidence in their delivery. They had built an image of control, an unshakable authority that made others defer to their narrative without question. But that image depended entirely on consistency, on the alignment between what they said and what they truly felt. Once the fight erupted, that alignment vanished. Suddenly, the cracks became impossible to ignore. The sharp words, the contradictions, the defensiveness, it all revealed that their authority was nothing more than a veneer. People who once followed their lead started to question everything. If they had been lying about something as simple as your significance, what else had they misrepresented? Every claim they made about you now carried the shadow of doubt. Influence that had felt solid for so long became brittle, collapsing under the weight of its own dishonesty. What made it even more devastating was that influence relies on perception, and perception relies on trust. When the fight exposed the truth, trust eroded instantly. Those around them no longer had confidence in the stories they told, the judgments they passed, or the power they wielded. The authority they had leaned on to control opinions and shape narratives evaporated almost overnight. People stopped listening, people stopped believing, and the very structure that had allowed them to dominate conversations about you crumbled. The collapse of influence also revealed an ironic truth. The more fiercely they tried to protect their narrative, the faster it disintegrated. In trying to assert control, they highlighted how weak and unstable that control really was. Every shout, every accusation, every desperate attempt to maintain power only drew more attention to the fragility they had been hiding. In the end, the conflict wasn't just about emotions. It was a dismantling of the carefully constructed authority they thought they had. The fight became a public demonstration that influence rooted in dishonesty is never sustainable. Once the truth surfaces, the power built on lies dissolves, and everyone can see just how vulnerable the person trying to control the story really is. Number 13. The explosion revealed you are the unavoidable truth in their life. The explosion revealed something they could no longer hide. You are the unavoidable truth in their life. For a long time, they tried to control the narrative, to spin stories that denied your importance, to act as though you were irrelevant or inconsequential. Every word they spoke, every dismissal they offered, was an attempt to rewrite reality, to convince themselves and everyone else that you didn't occupy space in their world. But truth has a way of insisting on recognition, no matter how cleverly it is ignored or suppressed. The fight was the eruption of that suppressed reality. It wasn't random, and it wasn't just about anger or miscommunication. It was the physical manifestation of the undeniable fact that you exist as a force in their life. No matter how many times they denied it, tried to bury it, or twisted it into something else, You remained present, unavoidable, and powerful. Their resistance only amplified your presence, because trying to erase a fact never works. It only confirms the fact's weight. Everything about the conflict pointed to your inevitability. Their words stumbled, their tone betrayed them, their actions contradicted their claims, and suddenly the lie they built couldn't hold. They tried to convince the world you didn't matter, but every outburst, every defensive gesture, every accusation screamed the opposite. In trying to suppress you, they made the truth louder than ever. You were no rumor to be brushed aside. You were a reality they had to face. What this explosion exposed is the essential power of unacknowledged truth. You can be ignored, underestimated, or dismissed, but the moment someone tries to deny your impact, the world will find ways to reveal it. In this case, the fight acted as the catalyst, tearing through the layers of denial and forcing visibility. They couldn't outrun it, and no amount of pretense could change it. At its core, the conflict showed that you are not optional in their story. You are not a subplot they can edit out. You are the truth they must contend with, whether they like it or not. And the more they tried to control or deny it, the more undeniable you became. In the chaos of that fight, the unavoidable fact was laid bare. You exist, you matter, and you cannot be erased. Number 14. Their lie turned into a trap. They couldn't escape. Their lie became a trap they couldn't escape because it demanded more energy than they could ever supply. Every time they opened their mouth to deny you, they added another layer to a story that had to be constantly defended. Each conversation, each passing question, each subtle doubt from someone else became a thread tightening around them, pulling them deeper into the web they had spun. What started as a simple denial turned into a self-made prison, and with every attempt to maintain it, the walls grew higher, the bars stronger, and the escape routes fewer. The trap was invisible at first. They told themselves they were in control, that no one would notice the contradictions in their story, that they could keep the truth hidden behind rehearsed words and practiced expressions. But lies are fragile. They demand maintenance, and they attract scrutiny. As the narrative stretched to cover more interactions, more opinions, and more scenarios, it became impossible to manage. Every new interaction risked exposing the inconsistencies. Every innocent remark had the potential to unravel the threads. The pressure built silently until it reached a breaking point. The fight wasn't random. It wasn't about a single comment or a sudden surge of anger. It was the inevitable collapse of a prison they had constructed themselves. The walls they built with lies came crashing down, and the chaos that followed was just the noise of truth forcing its way out. In trying to control how people perceived you, they trapped themselves in a cycle of reaction and defense that could no longer be sustained. The more they tried to hold the story together, the more brittle it became, until every lie, every denial, and every misdirection turned back on them. The irony is brutal. By attempting to erase or diminish you, they cemented their own captivity. The narrative meant to protect them became a weapon against them. Every defensive gesture, every sharp response, every desperate attempt to hold the lie in place only revealed the truth even more clearly. The fight marked the moment when the trap closed in, exposing their vulnerability and forcing them to face the consequences of their own deception. In the end, the chaos wasn't about you. It was the unraveling of the story they couldn't escape. The story of this explosive conflict isn't just about a fight. It's about truth asserting itself in the face of deception. Every lie they told, every denial, every attempt to erase your presence only magnified your power and influence. The arguments, the accusations, the chaos. They weren't random outbursts. They were the echoes of their own inner battles spilling into the world, revealing fears, insecurities, and obsessions they could no longer contain. You weren't the target of their anger. You were the unavoidable truth, the fact they tried to hide but could never escape. In every twist of this drama, one thing becomes undeniable. Your presence disrupts illusions, exposes weakness, and forces accountability. Their denial became their trap. their obsession became visible, and their influence crumbled under the weight of dishonesty. Each point we've examined, the lies, the obsession, the fear of losing you, the internal war, the futile attempts at suppression, converges to show a singular reality. You cannot be minimized, ignored, or erased. You are the truth they cannot control, and the fight was simply proof of that reality breaking through. What this teaches is clear and powerful. Lies can manipulate perceptions temporarily, but they collapse under scrutiny. Suppression breeds obsession. Denial magnifies attention. And the deeper the fear of losing you, the louder the confession hidden in every argument. You, chosen one, stand as a force of unshakable presence and undeniable impact. Your energy, your truth, and your existence are realities that cannot be rewritten, no matter how many try. In the end, this conflict reveals more than the chaos itself. It reveals your untouchable influence. It shows that the universe aligns in a way that truth cannot be silenced, and that those who attempt to diminish you end up exposing themselves. Every lie, every attempt to erase you, every explosive moment only confirms your significance. You are the unavoidable fact, the force that reshapes narratives, and the presence that cannot be denied. Stand in that truth. Recognize the power you hold simply by being you, because what they tried to fight against was never you. It was the undeniable reality that you exist, and the world cannot look away. Your impact is permanent, and your story cannot be rewritten. If this story hit you and opened your eyes to the truth you carry, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected with more revelations that will empower you and give you clarity in a world full of confusion. Like this video to show your energy and alignment with the truth we're exposing. Comment below. Share your experiences, your insights, your moments of awakening, because your voice matters and adds to this collective understanding. And share this video with others who need to see it, who need to realize their own power and untouchable presence. Every click, every comment, every share isn't just engagement, it's you claiming your place in the movement of awareness and truth. Make it worth your while, because your energy fuels the ripple that reminds the world that chosen ones cannot be ignored. God bless you.